Welcome back. Coming up shortly on the program, the best water in Australia. Where does it come from? This could lead to civil war. That coming up. There are calls, though, for asylum seekers placed in indefinite detention, such as those in Melbourne's Park Hotel in Carlton, to be sent to work on farms to ease critical staff shortages affecting our food supply chain. Now, some shortages have reached 50% in particular sectors, which is impacting restaurants, supermarkets, and what you're able to put on the dinner table. Joining me now is GT Communications Executive Director Gemma Tognini and broadcaster Justin Smith. Happy New Year to you both.
And you, Chris.
And to you,
Hi,
Chris.
Gemma.
Hello there, Justin.
Now, Gemma, I'll start with you. Is this a good way to deal with shortages, or does it allow asylum seekers to simply jump the queue that their detention has tried to prevent?
Look, I think I'm going to take a view that might be somewhat unpopular amongst my Conservative cohort, Chris. I think we're conflating two issues here. My view has long been that if Australia cannot do better in our processing of long-term asylum seekers, we need to have a good hard look at why. I think successive governments have failed in this space. The shortage, and I'm from the great state of West Australia, Chris, so I know all about staff shortages and supply chain issues as we slowly inch towards the end of our bubble here. I don't think the two issues should be conflated. I do think we need to pay better attention to addressing the issue of people in long-term detention because they're seeking asylum in this country. That being said, the best way to address staff shortages and workforce shortages in Australia is to fast track our move out of this pandemic. We have the highest vax rate, amongst the highest vax rates in the world. We have therapeutics available. There has to come a time where we stop, pardon the expression, wetting the bed at every new strain. I think that's the best and most sensible way out of that.
Justin, is it workable in any shape or form?
Oh, look, I think it'd be really tough. I'd actually love to see it because let's try and remember this here. These people, I don't care what anyone describes them as queue jumpers or whatever, these people are not criminals. And one thing the whole Bogut saga did for us was just to highlight, which many of us knew anyway, those that had been paying attention, is the appalling way that we have been, not only the way that we've been treating these people, but just the mere fact that we haven't been able to process them. I mean, we've just been rubbish at this. We have just been appalling at setting this up. And Gemma's quite right. This is not a Labor or Liberal thing. Both of them have failed abysmally at processing these people. And in doing it, we've just treated them like cattle.
But to be
terrible.
fair, part of the problem is the fact that we give them three separate, sometimes long-running avenues to appeal the government or departmental decision. That's not overly cruel. It's just that the system clunks very slowly.
Yeah, well the system clunks slowly, but I'll tell you another thing. The system doesn't clunk slowly if you've got a good backhand. You can get yourself through the federal court through a Sunday sitting. Then the system moves at a very, very rapid rate. I'll tell you what, people talk about the embarrassment of this Bogut thing. The big embarrassment is what we just mentioned with the refugees. And the other one is the way that the courts are happy to sit if you've got loads of money.
Gemma?
I think it's appalling.
My father came to Australia on a boat with my nonna and his sister in '56. The boat was called the Australia. The ship was called the Australia. They arrived at Fremantle Passenger Terminal. And I say this, Chris, the blessing of being post-war economic migrants who had nothing but the clothes on their back, but they came to Australia, and Australia has given my family an incredible life of opportunity. I think that the Bogut affair was a terrible way to make a number of very good points, and one of those is that justice is for the wealthy. And
yes.
I understand that not in all cases is it a simple case of proving refugee status. I understand that in many cases it's a complex matter dealing with questionable identity, dealing in many cases with criminal records in other countries that have particular context around them. I understand that it's not simple, but if we've got people in this country who've been in long-term detention for 5, 7, 10 years, which we do, is my understanding, we need to do better.
The system is stuffed That's what that means. All right, I want to move on to Andrew Bogut. The former Aussie basketballer, Andrew Bogut, has slammed Victoria's Electoral Commission for attempting to silence his right to free speech after he was sent a notice from the Commission cautioning him over the sharing of a video that called on voters to vote out state crossbench MPs who supported pandemic legislation. The Commission claimed it was some kind of breach of electoral advertising laws. Huh? But Bogut has rightly stood his ground. Have a look at this.
I refused to do that, and I was offered money for it. I don't need the money. You're right. I was offered money for it. I refused to do that. Athletes that are in leagues all around Australia and even the world to an extent, I know for Australia for a fact because I've had people reach out to me, have been muzzled. Athletes that are on contract in our biggest leagues in Australia, AFL, NRL, whatever you want to call it, they've been told you are not to make anti-lockdown, anti-government statements on social media, period, no matter how drastic they are, because it affects our league staying open and you getting a salary. That's why these people aren't batting for you. And yes, I am in a privileged position where I don't need to rely on anyone for my money.
Justin, Andrew was not supporting any party, which is what he's been accused of. And I know, having interviewed him in a lengthy session once only 18 months ago, he's not connected to a party. He's just the party of common sense, and he's a very vocal member of that party. The Commission has to be joking, don't they?
I think it's rubbish. I agree with you 100%. I back Bogut to the hilt on this. I actually couldn't believe it. I read the article about 4 times just to make sure I didn't get it wrong. I think the Victorian Electoral Commission has really overstepped here, and they've got it so appallingly wrong. I can't believe that we're living in the same goddamn country as the people that run the Commission. I mean, so is this the way it works? So I sit down and I write a column for the Herald Sun saying that I don't like Daniel Andrews, I don't like Scott Morrison, whatever, and I think they should go at the next election. If I wrote a column like that, am I in breach of the same? I mean, is that the way it's going to work? Because if that's the way it's going to work, I mean, you know, we've just changed a few things constitutionally here. I find that appalling. I think everyone that can, anyone who's got a voice and has some power, should stick up for Bogut on this one, because this is an important one to win. I
couldn't agree more. Gemma, if there are laws somewhere that stop us speaking freely on politics, no matter who it is, we are doomed.
Oh, completely. And the beauty of Andrew Bogut, as he often says, and I'm a huge fan of what he has to say, I don't necessarily agree with everything that comes out of his mouth, but I absolutely love the fact that he plainly states, I am beholden to no one. I am financially secure. God bless him, he's worked hard to get there, which means he can speak freely and without being encumbered. This is deeply concerning, not just in isolation, but in the trend that we have seen in recent months, days, and you know, since the start of this pandemic, about silencing dissenting views. I mean, he made the point to The Australian of all the garbage that we see on social media, of all the garbage, forget even the political stuff, people's views, but violence, all of that kind of stuff that is aired you know, on that platform and others. And in this case, the Electoral Commission tries to sanction this bloke for saying, I reckon you should vote that person out. Well, what happens, as Justin just said, what happens if I write a column for The Australian and I think I might have actually already written this and said that Daniel Andrews doesn't deserve... I've certainly said it plenty of times. Yep. I've certainly said it dozens of times. I mean, this is... Freedom of speech is the tenet of our democracy. And this is absolutely wrong, unfortunately, not off-brand at all for the Socialist Government of Victoria.
Justin?
Absolutely. Look, I think if it would be very different if Andrew Bogut was running for a political party and wasn't telling us, or it was something like that, because I think some of these laws are in place for a reasonably good reason. I think we're generally over-governed in this area, but some of those things are there for...
In every area.
But for a pretty good reason. Some of those things are there, but that's not the case.
No.
He's just a guy who happens to have a lot of followers and a lot of backing and a big mouth. And I say a big mouth in the right kind of way. Don't shut that mouth, Andrew. Keep doing it. And even if you and I will disagree on it, I don't care. The fact that he can speak up means that we're living in a proper free speech democracy. Getting him shut down, we've got to fix it. We can't allow
We've
it.
got to fix it. That's the other thing. We shouldn't let it pass. We've got to fix it. Now, I want to go to the US. President Joe Biden has told a 2-hour-long press conference, there's a first for you, that he expects Russia to invade Ukraine. Here he is.
We're finding ourselves in a position where I believe you'll see that there'll be severe economic consequences. For example, anything that involves dollar denominations, if they invade, they're going to pay.
Gemma, I watched most of that press conference and he said it so nonchalantly, Russia is going to invade Ukraine, in an answer to a question. Why don't I feel a sense of security with this bloke in charge of international diplomacy and stopping the Russians getting into the Ukraine?
Because at any given point, he doesn't look like he's capable of being there. And I don't say that to be trite or to be deliberately, making light of something that's so serious. We've seen since his inauguration, we have seen repeated examples of a person who appears at least to be in cognitive decline, a person who has shown behaviour that, dare I say it, were, displayed by a Republican president, would have had calls, very vocal calls for him to be assessed and perhaps put on the bench for a while. I think that's why most of us look at this with trepidation, because this bloke does not seem capable at any given point. And thank you for watching 2 hours of that media conference, so I don't have to. But what I did see was pretty disturbing stuff. Yeah,
I watched an hour of it. I couldn't stand anymore. Justin, just very quickly, he says he's going to stand again in 2024. If you were a bookie, what price would you put on that?
Oh, probably not a lot. Gee, I'd love to see... Honestly, I don't want to see anything bad happen to him, but I'd really like to see him get the flick in some way, shape or form and get some goddamn passion in there. I mean, I hate Trump with the glowing light of a nova, but, at least there was some passion there. I don't think he's much good for anything, to be honest. I know that's a terrible thing to say, and he probably falls a little more in line with my type of politics, but God, wake up for goodness sake.
Yeah, I think it's 1,000,000 to 1. 1,000,000 to 1 that he'll stand in 2024. The party won't have it. All they've got to do is look at their poll numbers a year after and realise they're way behind.
Pretty grim.
The 8 ball.
Chris, I think you should get some sort of special journalism award for sitting through a 2-hour Joe Biden press conference. There's got to be some medal for that, mate.
Yeah,
Surely.
There is. Gemma, Justin, thank you so much for being part of the program tonight.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Good on you.